Hello friends, I am Leighellen and this is Momma Leighellen's Book Nook. Today I am doing a book haul. These are all books that I have recently received this past week from publishers, so I want to share them with you and talk about each one and let you know their launch date. So that's what we're doing today, a little book haul for you. Hi friends, thanks so much for joining me again today. My channel is all about books, and so today that's what we're going to talk about. I have a massive stack of book mail here. Oh, let's see if I can lift it. Oh, it's kind of large. These are all books I got this past week from publishers, so I want to first of all thank all of the publishers and authors for sending these my way. I will be reading and reviewing them this next week and posting everything on my blog and on Goodreads. But for now, I'm just going to share with you what I got and tell you their publishing dates and a little bit about each book. Okay, so first up, I have this book by Bob Goff. This is Everybody Always, but it's for kids. So I have the original Everybody Always by Bob Goff, and I've actually read all of Bob Goff's books. He's this amazing Christian author that is just super inspirational and hands-on, and so what he's done is he's taken his adult book and made it for kids, and the way he's done that is by adding like fun kid illustrations in there. Let's see if you can see that. And just making these stories more attainable for children, but it's really fun. There's like all kinds of stories in here, from, you know, how to be a good friend, to how to love your neighbor, to how to include people, how to be nice to people that are different than you, how to communicate well. There's just so many themes. I love that he's taking these adult concepts from his book Everybody Always and putting it for children. So, you know, how to be nice to that kid that was mean to you on the playground, how to, you know, how to love your baby sister who ruins all your art projects, how to be nice to that boy that is different to you in class. So he takes real practical applications that children can easily understand and then puts them in these cute little stories that are all really short, on ways that we can love each other well. So this releases next week, February 16th, from Thomas Nelson Publishing. I am hosting a giveaway for this in this next week on my Instagram page, so I will link that below. So stay tuned and watch, because I believe I've got like 3 or 5 copies to give away. Okay, next up is No Hiding in Boise by Kim Hooper, and this book is a story that follows 3 separate women's lives. It is a contemporary fiction, women's fiction novel, and it follows these 3 women's lives after a terrible event. So there is a shooting in a bar, and one man is in the hospital. And so one of the people that you follow is the wife of that man. Then there's the bartender who hides in a closet, and so that her story is told. And then it's the mom of the shooter. So you learn how these 3 women's lives are now inexplicably linked to each other because of this event, and how just this event even came to be. So I think this sounds fantastic. This is from Keylight Books, and this comes out June 15th of 2021. So I've got a little while to read this, but I will read it and review and let you know what I think soon. The next book is Jen Johnson's Suitors for the Proper Miss. Now, I love Jen's books. I have read quite a few of them, and she is known for these just beautiful historic Regency romances. And this one is no different, I'm sure. It just came out today, and this one is about this gal here. She is like destined to marry a duke. She wants to marry a duke. She's like convinced herself since childhood that she should marry a duke, but she wants to lift her family out of poverty. But of course, she has a crush on the cute little stable boy, but he is below her station. So she tries to not be interested in him, but of course she's interested in him. And so then it just follows their adorable little romance, and how he tries to rise above his station, and how she tries to overcome her, you know, desire to live this grand life with a duke. So it is going to be really cute. So I will review this one really soon. So this is Suitors for the Proper Miss, Regency romance, and it is out today. Next up is a book that I'm super excited to share with you. It is called The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna, and this is one of my most anticipated fantasy books of the year. I love YA fantasy, and this just sounds amazing. So the concept is that there's this village, and they are a patriarchal society, and every girl when she turns 15 goes through this ritual where she is cut by a priest, and then her blood color determines her worth, and you either bleed red or you bleed gold, and she bleeds gold, which puts her on this whole other path. So what does that mean? So this gold blood is a special blood that has magic in it. So she is magical. She has magical abilities. So when they go to kill her, it heals her instantly. Her body just regenerates, and they kill her like 9 times and she comes back to life. And she's finally rescued from that prison and sent to the capital to work for the emperor, and he creates this army of these girls with this power, and so she gets to lead an army. So this book has all sorts of themes: racism, xenophobia, patriarchal societies. I think I'm gonna love this one. I love fantasy, but I also love when books have deeper themes, and this one has a lot of themes like, you know, misogyny and inequality and abuse and trauma. So I think it's gonna be good. I've heard it's really intense. I've heard it could be pretty gory, but you know, I've read the Poppy Wars, so I feel like I'm pretty legit at this point. I'm really excited to read this. I love action and adventure, and I think this is gonna be filled with it. This one was just released today, February 9th, and it's from Della Cortez Press and Namina Forna. The next book I received is The Girl in the Painting by Tia Cooper. It's out March 9th, and I received this from TLC Book Tours, so this will be a book tour that's featured on my Instagram page and on my blog. It's from Thomas Nelson Publishing. This is an ARC, so this is not out yet. You will get this in March. This is historical fiction. It is dual timeline, which I always love, and it follows a brother and a sister, and it is set in Australia, which I also think is interesting. There's not a ton of historical fiction that I have read in Australia. The first timeline takes place in a mining town, and then the next timeline is later on after the gold rush, so you see kind of the before and after for these two characters. Let me read a little bit of the back for you so you kind of know what it's about. Orphan Jane Piper is 9 years old when siblings Michael and Elizabeth take her into their home to further her schooling. The Quinns are no strangers to hardship, having arrived in Australia as immigrants. And at one point they go to an art gallery, and there's an exhibit that triggers some memories in Elizabeth, and it sends her into shock. And so then the rest of the story is kind of going back and forth between the timelines, so we can try to figure out what exactly happened to her and why. So a little bit of historical fiction, a little bit of mystery. I am excited for this one. This comes out March 9th from Thomas Nelson Publishing. The next book that I'm excited to share with you is When Stars Rain Down, and this is a book that was sent to me from TLC Book Tours, and I'll be featuring on my Bookstagram account. This comes out April 13th, and it's from Thomas Nelson. So this is an ARC, so I will read this and tell you what I think. But it's historical fiction, which you know I love. It is a coming-of-age story, which I also love. It's set in 1930s in Georgia and follows this young 17-year-old girl preparing for her birthday and her coming-of-age ceremony, and it's, you know, deep south, and the KKK comes to town, and so it's all about this town dealing with racism. I love coming-of-age stories, and I love stories set in America that deal with our history, and it follows this young girl and her family as they struggle with dealing with the KKK and racism and segregation in the deep south. So I will keep you posted on my thoughts on this one. Next up is another historical fiction. This is historical romance. It's called A Dance in Donegal. And this is about a woman from Boston who goes to Ireland to teach. So that's all my favorite things. Ireland, historical fiction, teaching. I think I'm gonna love it. It takes place in 1920s Ireland and follows the story of this young woman who moves from Boston to Ireland to teach. So, and of course, she falls in love. So it's got a little romance in there. This is actually out now. This was published on February 2nd, and it comes from Revels Publishing. The next book I'm really excited to share with you is Some Other Now by Sarah Everett. It is a contemporary YA fiction novel. The reason why I was so excited about it was they're calling it a YA This Is Us. And if you've ever watched This Is Us on NBC, you know, it's just one of those stories that pulls at your heartstrings. The publication date is next week. It releases February 23rd from HMH Books. So you'll want to check this one out. The story follows this young girl who is like best friends with her next door neighbors. There's these two boys that live next door and they do everything together. And then one day she ends up hooking up with one of the brothers, and it of course changes everything, changes the dynamics. And then the story fast forwards to where a year has gone by and she hasn't spoken to them anymore. What I think is going to be fantastic about this book is that it is dual timeline, which is something that I always really enjoy. So it flashes back. It has present day, their issues right now as they deal with their mother being ill, to the past and when they were best friends. So I think this is going to be a cool like coming of age story and just family dynamics and I don't know. I think it's going to be good. I love stories about family and friendship, and I think this one's really going to deliver. So there's more. Hang in there. Thanks for following along with all of my book mail. So next up we have The Incredible Winston Brown by Sean Dietrich. And apparently he is a podcaster. I don't follow him, but you can check out some of his podcasts. I guess he's pretty funny. This is a book about a small town, 1950s in Florida, and it follows this sheriff. And apparently this little girl ends up like stealing hens from his hen house, and he gets stuck kind of like caring for her. Apparently this little girl is a runaway, and so thus begins this kind of mystery to find out where she came from and what to do with her. And the whole town kind of rallies around to care for her. So I think this will be a fun community kind of drama about communities coming together. This book comes out March 2nd from Thomas Nelson Books. This is an ARC, so this will not be the final copy, but I will review this and post my review on my blog and most likely on Instagram as well, so stay tuned for that. Next up is probably one of the most anticipated contemporary fiction, literary fiction books of the year, and that is The Kindest Lie. This is by Nancy Johnson. This book just came out February 2nd from William Morrow Books. And this is a contemporary novel. It takes place in 2008, shortly after Barack Obama was elected president. It is a dual point of view book. So it follows Ruth, who is a married Black woman, and she's filled with hope, but she also realizes that racism is still alive and well in her community. And then it also simultaneously follows the life of a young white boy and his life of poverty and what racism looks like to him. This book tackles a lot of current issues, from unemployment to racism to justice to motherhood. And I think this would be a fantastic book club book, frankly. I don't do contemporary fiction usually with my book club, but I would encourage you to read this with someone just for the discussion factor. Ruth is an Ivy League educated Black engineer living in rural Chicago. Ruth decides to go back to her hometown, and that's where she befriends this young boy named Midnight, who's this young white teenager. And Ruth finds that although she has escaped her town and poverty and made a name for herself, her town has fallen into disrepair. So I think this is going to be a great book because it's really going to look at wealth and class and social structures and race and just create a lot of good conversations. So this will be a deeper read, but will be worth the read. Okay, next up is a really interesting, exciting book that I can't wait to share with you. It is called Master of Revels, and it is the sequel to The Rise and Fall of Dodo. And that book was by Neil Stephenson, who's one of my favorite authors. He's writes a lot of just creative science fiction type fantasy books, and this one I think will be in that same category. It's supposed to deal with time travel and history and witches, which is all fun stuff for me. This last book really was kind of mind-blowing. All his books are, but I'm excited for this one because it's written by Nicole Galland, and she's was a co-author of the first one, so I think I'm gonna like this. It's ginormous, so I'm a little intimidated. This is set in Shakespearean England, and it's about a time-traveling witch who works for the US intelligence agencies. So in the first book, you're introduced to this thing called Dodo, which was a department of diachronous operations that is a US intelligence agency. And they were responsible for not reinventing, but like resurfacing the art, the lost art of time travel. And they learned that you could like tweak history by making little, just small changes that wouldn't like ruin history, but that would just like adjust it a little bit. One of the things that I think I'm really gonna enjoy about this novel is that it is not written in a traditional sense of just a regular static flowing story, but they include other literary devices. So there's handwritten notes in here, there are official like government documents in here, there's emails in here, there's letters in here. I really love when books do that. I just think it makes the story come alive and it makes it really interesting. So in this story you have the original agency that's working, and then you have this new kind of rogue agency that's trying to undo what the first agency has done. So both of them are going back in time and trying to like adjust and fix what the other one has done. So kind of dueling time travel agency. But overall, I think it's going to be really interesting and fun. This comes out February 23rd from William Morrow Books, and I will be featuring this as part of the TLC Book Tours tour of this book. So I better get started because it's a monster of a book, but I think it's gonna be, you know, unique, especially because I do have so much historical fiction this month. So I think it will be fun to add some fantasy in there. And last but not least is another historical fiction novel. This is called While Paris Slept, and this comes out February 23rd from Grand Central Publishing. This is another dual timeline. It's got a timeline in America in the 1950s and then flashes back to Paris in 1944. It follows the life of this train maintenance worker who, while working in Paris, befriends a woman who's fleeing the Nazis and gives him her baby to save. He takes this baby, and then when he, at the end of the war, when he goes back to America, he now has this child, and so this fast forwards 9 years later, he now has this 9-year-old child who just thinks he's American and does not know his background or his history. Then the police come and say that he is not the father, and they try to take the child away. So that's all I know about this, but it sounds gripping. It's supposed to be, you know, I love dual timeline books. I love emotional dramas. I love historical fiction. So I think this is going to have all the makings of a winner in my book. I'm always drawn to books that talk about, you know, the strength of spirit and the human heart and perseverance, and I think that's got all of this in it. So friends, that is my massive book haul. Thanks for joining me today. Let me know below what you think. Do any of those sound good? Is there one that you would want to read above all others? You can win a copy of one of these books today by going to my Instagram page and entering the giveaway that is there. I will link that below. And make sure to subscribe so that you can come back and see what I have next week. As always, friends, thanks so much for joining me. Please subscribe wherever that is on here and follow along so that you can see the next set of books that I get sent. And at the end of the month, I will do a wrap-up of my favorite books, and along the way I will share chats as I complete these books on here to tell you what I think of them. So thanks a lot. Have a great night.